Hi guys, and welcome back to Lather Rinse Repeat. Today is the first installment of our Christmas-themed gift-giving ideas, and I have Emma from Reid Between the Vines, Nova Scotia here to talk about book lovers, or gifts for book lovers, I guess. So welcome, Emma. Thank you so much for coming on and talking about books with me today. Can you, before we get started into some gifts ideas, tell me kind of why you're such a book lover?
Okay, great. Hi, Jessica. Thanks so much for inviting me on. My name's Emma. I live in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, and I have a new small business called Reid Between the Vines. I've always kind of been a bookworm, but recently, since we've been stuck at home, I have tried to be kind of a more avid reader, I guess, and I wanted to kind of integrate myself into the book community in Halifax, and so I looked for a book club and I couldn't find any, and so I guess I kind of started my own with this monthly subscription box that includes a drink, a book, and some locally made chocolate. And so I think Jessica found me on Instagram, and my main focus is books because I love books so much. And anyways, that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the Lather Rinse Repeat podcast show. So to get into some sort of book recommendations, I picked out my top 5 books that I read this year for adults, and I picked 3 that I read this year for young adults. They weren't necessarily released this year. I just haven't been that up to my 2020 novel reading, so I do have some older book recommendations as well, but I wanted to start with any that you might wanted to add.
Sure. So I have actually read one in particular that isn't necessarily geared towards young adults, but one that I thought would be a really great option for young adults. It's called The Map of Salt and Stars. It's written by a Syrian American trans man named Zain Dukar, and it's such a great book for learning a little bit about Middle Eastern culture, and I thought it was a really approachable way to kind of learn a little bit about that. But I guess the focus that I kind of focused on this afternoon when I was trying to narrow down my very favorite reads from 2020, or at least like Jessica, I read them in 2020. There are some older choices. Most of them are in the last couple of years, but I think my number one pick was a nonfiction piece by Barbara Kingsolver. She's been my favorite fiction writer. She wrote The Poisonwood Bible. She wrote Flight Behavior. She wrote so many great books. And one of her very first autobiographies was this kind of assortment of mini essays that she wrote. And it really didn't sound that appealing to me because I'm typically a fiction girl and I'm typically not an essay reader, but I just love Barbara Kingsolver so much. She writes a lot of ecological fiction, and my background is in marine biology. And so this is just an assortment of essays that kind of describes her like chaotic life as an independent author and a single mom, and it's really, really cool. What I like about her fiction is it's really raw, and it's kind of a unique perspective on love stories. Like they always kind of revolve around a central couple, kind of. I mean, not always, but that's kind of her thing. But they're not your typical rom-com. And she normally writes fiction, and so this was the High Tide in Tucson, the one that I'm referring to, was actually published in '95, and so obviously it's an older.
What's
older
the name
piece.
of it?
High Tide in Tucson.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fabulous. I've read a lot of nonfiction this year because I really wanted to get into it because I haven't really been, but there's been so many great like authors of color this year that have come out with these memoirs describing their struggles with racism, and I really, really wanted to learn more about that. So I tried to kind of really invest time in learning about that. And one of my very favorites from that kind of genre, if you want to call it that, is by Malcolm Gladwell from 2019, Talking to Strangers, and it's what we should know about the people we don't know.
Okay.
And he kind of describes why these really toxic relationships kind of fester between people at a basal level, and it's almost acceptable. And I'm trying to think of a specific example from his book. Like there was, for instance, an American politician that visited Adolf Hitler when he was in power, and like his perception of Adolf Hitler was one that Adolf Hitler was like a calm, relaxed, thoughtful person. And Malcolm Gladwell in his book kind of dives into why those kind of perspectives really led to people like Adolf Hitler controlling a nation in the way that he did, and how like systemic racism becomes so acceptable. And he just talks about how it really grows from a basal level into like full-fledged like systemic problems. And I thought it was really cool because I'd never read a book like that, but I also never really thought about the perspective that he describes in his book. So, and it was also the only Malcolm Gladwell book that I have read. That was the first one I had read, and so it was a good one to start with.
I think I read the Outliers by him.
This was the first book of his that I read. But yeah, I really, really loved it. I think I actually listened to that one on audiobook, and I think it was read by Malcolm Gladwell himself.
I think that I would find a book like that more palatable being read to me.
Well, and especially when it's the author, they have such a vested interest, and they're reading it to you exactly how they want you to read it, if you know what I mean. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, kind of like you're really invested in it. Another nonfiction that I really, really liked, Bad Blood by John Carryrou, I think is how you pronounce his name.
Okay.
It was a nonfiction piece on that. I think it was called Theranos, and it was this piece of equipment that was developed by this young woman in California who said that it was able to diagnose and treat different ailments by testing like a drop of your own blood. And it became this like multi-billion-dollar company, I'm quite sure. They certainly had invested that much at least. There was absolutely like no grounds on this technology at all.
I remember hearing about that. I was waiting for you to say it before. I was like, oh yeah, I know, but
yeah. And so she's obviously like totally debunked. She's being charged with numerous things, and it's just a very strange story and really, really interesting. And it was written by, I believe it's Wall Street Journal. He's an author at the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times, like a really big New York publication. So he's just really well versed in literature. So I love that. I love my favorite one that was actually published this year. This was like my number one pick from 2020, like in terms of written, published in 2020, was My Dark Vanessa. It was a book about this girl who goes to school and has this like inappropriate relationship with her teacher. And it's just a really interesting look at like a really just interesting feminist perspective on what being a young girl is like in school and feeling lonely and just kind of alone. And it just kind of tells her story through the lens of another woman, which is something I like.
Nice. I haven't heard of that one. Who's the author?
Kate Elizabeth Russell.
Okay. I've never even heard of her.
I believe it's her first book.
Okay.
I believe it's her first book, and it was just published in April this year. So it's new. And she's fairly young herself, Kate Elizabeth Russell. I think she's only 30 or so. So she's great.
Awesome.
I have 3 more, and I can keep going if you want me to.
Well, yeah, let's do all yours, and then we'll go through my list because I have I have 8 as well. So you're definitely not going to too much.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so one of my favorite funny reads. It's certainly a nonfiction because it's written kind of. So Ali Wong is a stand-up comedian. She's one of my favorite comedians. Like, period. I find her so funny, so witty, so like raw, and just so smart. She's just great. And her book is called Dear Girls, and it's kind of written in the way that she would, like, she's written like this long letter because she has 2 daughters, and she's written this kind of like how to succeed in life as an adult person in the world. And it kind of just tells her stories, how she became successful, her flaws, her speed bumps, her troubles. It's just hilarious. And of course it describes like how she met her husband and how she came to be this huge, amazing, crazy comedian. And oh my gosh, I love her so much. And I listened to that on an audiobook read by her, and it was 10 out of 10.
Nice. I'm on the wait list at the library for that one, actually.
Yeah, it is fabulous.
I might see if I can find one of those skip the line holds on it. I love those.
Yeah, I would read, that's another one I would probably just read again, just because it was honestly just like reading stand-up comedy. It was so good. So good.
Okay, I'm going to star that one. Highly
Yeah,
recommended.
you gotta read it or listen to it or whatever. You gotta see it.
Consume it.
Yes. And so another, I think this next one was my favorite nonfiction. It was published in 2019. And it's called Invisible Women. I saw one of your picks on your list, and that was one of my. When you go through it all, I won't spoil it. But
Okay.
when I saw your pick, I thought immediately of this one. So it's Invisible Women: Data Bias in a World Designed for Men, and it's really just a categorical nonfiction about how things are designed to be neutral, but they're not actually designed to be neutral because they're designed in a way that's neutral for like the average man rather than just the average person.
Okay.
Like safety features in a car are designed for the average like man's weight and height and things like that, and it results in so many injuries to women in a year. And it's just like it finds pieces of information that have been collected and kind of analyzed as like the norm or like the typical human, and it just does not take into account women at all in a lot of really big ways. Like the most substantial way, in my opinion, from that book was car safety, and how like all of the safety standards are all geared towards like the standard man. And it was written by a woman who went to the London School of Economics. So she's like an economist, and she took all this. She's just really good at analyzing data. So it was just a really good piece on data. And my very last, and also one of my very favorite picks, Elizabeth Gilbert is like obviously Eat, Pray, Love, blah, blah, blah. She's the best. This book of hers called The Signature of All Things, it's about 8 million pages long, but it's like a whole series. It's really not that long. It's probably 500 pages long. It's long, but it's, manageable. And it's like a whole series of like, it feels like you've read the whole Harry Potter series in this one book. It has nothing to do with Harry Potter. I don't know why I said that, but it just feels like that's how much depth it has. And it follows the life of this young girl I think it's in the early 1900s. And it's about how this young girl becomes a biologist. And I feel like I just love this because I biology. Like I'm just like, I could relate to it. And in this book, it was written very similarly to how Barbara Kingsolver writes. And maybe that's probably why I liked it too.
A book by Elizabeth Gilbert almost made my list, so I'll mention it even though it's not on my list, but City of Girls was great.
Oh my gosh. I read that a couple of years ago, so I didn't want to put it on my list.
Fair, yeah.
I did love City of Girls.
Yeah, it was really good. I really enjoyed that one.
Yeah, that one was a fabulous one. Yeah, she has like these really, really dense, but like just like packed full of really great writing books. I love that. It's
amazing how much I didn't like Eat, Pray, Love very much. It was not a book that I really got into, so I was hesitant to read City of Girls. But then like the world building and like the fact that you could really picture what it was like to live at that time was just so good.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree.
So those are some awesome picks. I haven't read any of them, which I really like. So that gives me a lot of great recommendations. So I'll go through some of mine. My first one on my list is Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. So that came out in 2017, but it basically follows the life path of this girl who's, I think she's in her mid to early 20s. She works at a job, she goes home, she pretty much does the same thing every single day, and she has this lonely, dull, boring life. Throughout the book, you kind of figure out sort of how she got on that path and why sort of some things happen to her that help her a bit. So I thought it would be a great book for somebody who, maybe they feel a little lonely. A lot of people could have had a very lonely year working from home and not seeing people as much, or maybe they lost their job or whatever. So I thought that was a nice, it's a feel-good story for sure, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I read that one maybe last year, and it was one of those ones that I was kind of a quarter of the way through, and I didn't know if I could really like bite onto it, and it really just like gripped me. And I love those books that kind of like pull you along
Yeah.
slowly, and then they like take you through a roller coaster. Yeah, I really really like that one too.
Yeah, the next one is more of like a gritty style. It's called Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and it came out in 2019. And this one blew up. I think that maybe a lot of people who are big readers have probably read this or at least heard of it at the very least. But it's about a fictitious band that sort of, it feels like it could be somewhat taken from real life in some ways. Like I'm quite certain she made the story up, but like it sounds like something that definitely could have happened in the 60s, 70s, and in the music industry for sure. Just the way that they sort of got bounced around as pawns by producers and music people. And yeah, it's a love story as well, but it's not just a love story. I think that even if you weren't in a mushy mood, you could probably get into this book.
Oh my gosh, Daisy Jones and the Six was one of those books that like really kept me going through one of those like periods of my reading that I wasn't finding any good ones. Like it was like kind of a
Right.
dud. And then I read Daisy Jones and the Six and I was like, okay, books are great.
Yeah.
One of my favorite ones by Taylor Jenkins Reid, actually, aside from Daisy Jones and the Six, is Evelyn Hugo. Wait, the Seven Husbands of
Yes.
Evelyn Hugo.
I'm on the wait list for that too.
Fabulous. I think that one came out before the Daisy Jones one, but oh my gosh, that one was a fabulous one too. And it kind of is a similar writing style, totally different story. It's
Yes.
about an actress, I think in the 60s or 50s. So it's totally different, but it's fabulous.
And the last fiction one that I added to my list, and that one did come out this year, is called The Henna Artist by Alka Joshi. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I think actually all of these books were on the Reese's book picks because she's pretty good at picking out good books. But this book is about this woman. I think she lives in Jaipur, India. I also have no idea how to say that. But anyway, she's in India and she's living her life and she's drawing henna, and then a lot of stuff happens to her that I can't say because it'll spoil everything in the book. And it's a roller coaster ride for this woman, basically. I'll say that. I thought it was a really good book. It gives you a little bit of information about Indian culture that maybe we wouldn't have had a perspective on, but mostly it's just like it's a really nice story.
And I also found it relatable, even though like she was very much like an Indian woman living in very Indian lifestyle. Like there were aspects of her life that were relatable, and that's kind of what I look for in novels that are from a different perspective. Like it was written by an Indian woman as well, so like it's kind of hard to make that connection when you don't have much in common with any of the characters. But I think the author did a really great job of making her a really approachable character.
Agree. The nonfiction ones that I went with, Educated by Tara Westover, and that book was like just drop dead fucking crazy to me. Like the stuff that happened to that woman was insane. But the thing that really got me was it reads like something that would have happened like in the 60s. But that woman is like, Tara Westover is my age. I think we were both born in 1986. And so to look at where she was and where she's come and then compare it to myself, I was like, well, Jessica, you really could have probably pulled your bootstraps up a little harder. But I mean, it was just, I think it did take me a long time to get through it. And I think that that's true for a lot of fiction books for me. But I was just wowed by that particular book.
Well, it's funny that you mention Educated because I have this book, and my friend said to me, Emma, can I please borrow this and read it? And I was in the middle of 3 other books, and I said, okay, just bring it back quick. and I don't have it back, and you've just reminded me, and I need to get the book back because I still haven't read it, and I really need to read it.
Okay. And my last adult pick is Three Women by Lisa Taddeo. I don't know how to say her last name either. And that one came out in 2019. And that one I really enjoyed because it reads like a fiction book, but it's actually a real story about three women who this author did some several in-depth interviews. I think that originally when she started talking to people, she had a different perspective for the book or plan for the book. And when she met these three particular women, she decided to interview them exclusively and sort of dig back a little bit into their lives. And one of the characters from that book, actually, when you started talking about My Dark Vanessa, I was like, oh, that book, they're related. Mm-hmm. So that one, I liked it because, like I said, it read like a fiction book, but it was real, and that's always kind of cool when books are about real people as well.
I loved that book. I mean, it was a hard read.
Yeah.
But I kind of read it during the same time that they were like trying Harvey Weinstein, and there was a lot of, I mean, there's always a lot of sexual abuse allegations, but it was kind of really being held in the spotlight at the time that book came out. Mm-hmm. And it was really, really eye-opening. And I really hope that a lot of women tend to read stories about women more often. And that's just a generalization. I don't have any data to support that, but my perspective is that.
Well, and all 5 books I chose had women as either the lead protagonist or as.
Yeah. And I mean, they're more relatable to women, of course. And I've read some stories about men, but I think that it should be included more in school, what's the word I'm looking for, curriculums.
Right. I agree
to
with
have
that.
books like Three Women and like Invisible Women. So the book that I chose, Invisible Women, kind of made me think about that because it highlights the importance of like just respect in general. And I think it should be a bigger part of school curriculums. And I think a really great way to do that is by reading, because it's, something every high school kid can do is read.
For sure.
So yeah.
For young adults, which I typically read a fair bit of young adult books, when I was kind of looking through my Goodreads, which, side note, if you don't have a Goodreads account, you should get one. To everyone or yourself, it's my favorite app. A lot of the young adult books that I read this year were sequels, and that's typical of young adult writers, is just write 3 to 7 books and cash cow them. So the first one that I'm going to mention, actually, the sequel has come out recently, so I felt good about mentioning this one. It's called American Royals, and it's by Katherine McGee. And the sequel, I think, came out pretty recently. I've got that one on my holds list at the library as well. But this book is it's like a what-if style book. So the premise is that America doesn't have a president. They have a royal family. And so this young girl is basically, she's being raised to be the next queen and all of the shit she has to deal with, more or less. Yeah, I really enjoyed that book. I thought it sort of had like a fresh perspective in a dystopian style world where you don't always get a lot of, there's a lot of, I guess, dystopian style books that it's always like the world is ending and America's burning and let's light everything on fire. Whereas this one's actually sort of like, no, everything's kind of normal. It's just a fresh spin on it. There's obviously going to be some sort of problem. I don't remember whether it was kind of far-fetched or whether it was kind of realistic, though, to be honest. And my next one, not straying far from the royal theme, is called Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuinton. And that one is also our time period, but a little different. So the premise in this one is there is a female president in the United States, and there's the royal family in England, but it's not the same royal family. They give them all different names, and that's it's probably due to some legality things. But yeah, so there's like a bit of a love triangle in that situation. If I say too much about it, I don't have like the book description here, so I don't want to say anything that's not in the book description. But there's a love triangle story there. There's some political drama. and I thought it was really good for young adults.
Red, White, and Royal Blue was like one of those books that I had just been recommended so many times. I just kind of bit the bullet. I don't normally like rom-coms. Well, no, that's not true. I do normally like rom-coms, but normally I have like a million other things on my list that I feel like I just have to read first. But this one, I just couldn't put it down, and I'm sure that this part is in the like description. It is an LGBTQ rom-com. So I was like, it's a little different. I'm gonna jump. It sounded like fun. And it was so much fun. Like I just like giggled the whole time.
Yeah, it was really
so
fun.
good. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And last, this one, if I was ranking a large list of books, I don't think would come anywhere near the top, but I just finished it a couple days ago, so I thought I would mention it. It's another LGBTQ friendly book, and it's called Reverie by Ryan LaSala. I think the Halifax Public Library actually did like a virtual book club on this book recently, and because there was some reason that everybody could check it out with no holds. So I read it, and it's basically a teen guy wakes up and he can't remember what happened. He was in an accident. And then so he sort of has to piece back together what's gone on in his life. He doesn't forget everything. Like, he knows his family, he knows people's names, but he doesn't have any like concrete memories, so he can't remember who his friends are, and he can't remember how the accident happened, those sort of things. But basically he has this power to access people's dreams, and there's a lot of like, it's a little bit scary actually. This book is a little bit low. It's like probably 3 out of 10 on the scary scale. There's some killing and there's some crazy stuff. He basically has to try and figure out what the heck happened to him, why it happened to him, and he has to figure out who his friends were and who his enemies were. And it's an interesting book. I don't know if I would say it had like the best storyline, but it had really great world building.
Okay.
So I really enjoyed.
I'll have to check it out.
It had a lot of like really great imagery description. So, and the cover is very pretty.
that's always
if we're judging books by their covers, this one is good. It's nice.
Makes a good gift for that reason, I guess.
Exactly. I haven't seen it in real life, but it does look quite shiny. After that, I did pick out a couple Christmas book recommendations. So I'll go through those pretty quickly, mostly because I've only read one of them. So I picked them for actual reasons, though. So there's the Christmas Cheesy Love Story, which is almost a must. If you watch a lot of Hallmark Christmas movies, you will love this book. It's called One Day in December by Josie Silver. Have you read it?
I haven't ever read a Christmas book. I really want to, so I'm like keenly listening. I'm keenly listening to your recommendations.
Well, I mean, I just read the synopses, and they all sounded pretty cute. So that one was like a cheesy love story. I would definitely read it. The next one I picked because it involves quarantine. Not quarantine from COVID, quarantining from a different thing.
Okay.
And like a different sickness of some sort, but it's called 7 Days of Us by Francesca Hornuck. And it sounds really good, so it's now on my TBR pile. The next one is like, it's an author that I have read before, and his name is David Sedaris, so he's a comedy writer. Kind of controversial comedy writer in a lot of his stories, but this one is called Holidays on Ice. I think that I really like comedy in the form of like stand-up short story style writing, so I thought that one would be good. The next one is like sort of a family-friendly story style. It's called Letters from Father Christmas by J.R.R. Tolkien. So basically, he used to send letters from Santa Claus or Father Christmas to his children, and so they're all chronicled in this book. Apparently it's pretty heartwarming. This one is an oldie, but it got quite of a cult-like following, I guess, and there's still to this day over 200 stage productions of it per year, and it's called P.S. Your Cat is Dead by James Kirkwood Jr. And basically it's this, I don't remember how old the main character is, but he's had a really shit year, like maybe a lot of us have. I guess it culminates in his cat dying. I don't
Oh,
know, but it
okay.
seems anything that gets like a weird cult following, I like to check out because I'm like, why?
Hmm.
And last, I chose because it is now a series on Netflix, and that is Dash and Lily's Book of Dares by Rachel Cohn and David Levithan. But I binged the series the other day. I have read that book. I loved the book. I thought it was a great little read. And then the series, I mean, I finished it in a day, but I really wasn't doing much that day either. It's only eight like 25-minute episodes.
Oh, okay.
So it's only like
a
a
movie.
really long movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, those were all of the book recommendations that I compiled, and then plus what you compiled. I think if you can't find somebody who loves books, a book to read, then you're not trying very hard.
That's an annual book list if I ever heard one.
Right. But then there may be book lovers who you don't know what they've read. You know, they love books, but they don't have a Goodreads account, so you can't go check it out to see if they've read this book that you want to give them or not. So I did pick out some other options as gift giving for your book loving friends or family members or loved ones. I don't know. Whoever you got to give gifts to.
Your cat.
Your cat, yeah. So I think that everybody can kind of agree that reading goes hand in hand a little bit with drinking wine, tea, or coffee. I always have something to drink while I'm reading unless I'm going to sleep. So you could either get them wine, tea, or coffee, or you could get them some really cute wine glasses or coffee/tea mugs. And I went on Etsy and I found some really cute ones with really cute slogans on them that you can get personalized. And I thought they were very cute.
Chapters always has a really, really, really great selection of like fun mugs that are also very large. So
Right.
I would recommend for sure checking out their. In Halifax, there's a ton of really great local artisanal crafters. Like Slightly Irregular has this really cool Instagram page with all of these really great mugs that she makes in her home just outside of Duncan's Cove, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I love her work. She also makes earrings and other things out of ceramic
Okay, cool.
or out of clay ceramic. Forgive me, I don't really know the difference, but she makes all these really beautiful things, and she's based in Halifax. So
awesome. Another thing that I think kind of people associate with books is candles, which I don't really get the connection, but when I was searching, I found a lot of really cool book sayings candles, or book smelling candles. So I found one that apparently smells like old books, one that smells like vintage books, and one that smells like coffee and books. So I was like, if you could smell through the internet, I would, but I'll have to take your word for it.
That's so funny.
I think that I would like to get any of those candles as a gift.
Yeah, I'm a huge scented candle fan. I'm very particular, but I find you can never go wrong with like a pine scented candle, especially around the holidays. Like it's just so fresh and it's like so warm and toasty.
True.
There's a ton of really great local candle places too. Oh my goodness. The Trainier General Store in Dartmouth has a lot of great stuff.
I love that place.
I know. Kept
has nice stuff, yeah. Candle and Wick, I believe, is a local
yeah,
candle maker.
I can't think of any like specific brands other than I can all for one or all in one. They employ adults with disabilities, and I thought that was super cool. I think it's called All in One or All for One. All for One or All in One. It is something like that, and they come in these little tins. And the smells are so amazing. They have one called like Blueberry Grunt, and they have Cranberry something and Evergreen and
nice. I'll have to
Bundy
check those
Shores.
Yeah, I'll have to check those out. I like the fruity scented stuff myself, so that's why maybe I don't have an old books smelling candle. Next, I saw another great idea was for people who like to have a lot of books in their home. You can get a stamp that would say from the library of, and then you could get it customized with their name. So they have like, You can get any kind of stamp, whether you want like modern printing or maybe like a more old style or vintage looking one. But they look cool.
Yeah, I actually ordered, so like recently for my business, that was kind of one of my ideas, was to put a stamp on the inside of the book so you could write your name, and it was like, this book belongs to. But if you wanted it, and I mean, you can get them from Staples. It's super easy. If you live in Halifax, there's a really great local company called London Rubber. I have no idea why they're called London Rubber, but they're based in Burnside. And
Okay.
they do next day rubber stamp printing. So if you need this gift for Christmas, they do overnight stamp making. So
Perfect.
they're the place to hit up.
Okay, London Rubber.
I think it's called London Rubber. I'm sure if you type in London Rubber stamps, you'll be able to find it.
Fair. Another item that I wanted to recommend, and it's because I have one myself, is bookish wall art. So I have one where it's just a girl sitting on like a stack of books. The same artist does like one like of a girl on a ladder, like looking through a big shelf of books. Or you can always find people who are like good at lettering and calligraphy and stuff, so they could get a book quote or maybe even just a quote about books. I think there's one by Albert Einstein about books that's pretty popular for that. But then, it just comes printed on some nice paper, slap it in a frame. They look great in gallery walls and stuff like that. So
yeah. Anything with books on it, like I'll hang it on my wall.
Yeah. And I've seen similar type things at places like Inkwell or Kept or Duly Noted. They have a lot of local.
Oh yeah, Duly Noted is a great option. I'm sure that Paper Hearts, like there's some local paper craft makers that I'm sure would do something like that. So cool.
For sure. Okay, this was the cutest and absolute coolest thing that I found on the internet yesterday. There is on Etsy a book-shaped cookie cutter that you can buy. You might only want to buy it for people who are maybe also kind of good in the kitchen, but it creates like a little book and it's got some like pages. I'm going to put a picture of it on the video, but it's so cute. I thought it would be like the absolute best gift ever.
Very cute.
There's an author named Tim Farrelly. I don't know how to say his last name, but he has a series of books with, I think, the most popular one being called Tequila Mockingbird. And it's basically literary themed cocktail recipes, which I think would be a great gift for the mixologist/bookologist. So if your friend has one of them, we'll use two more. There's one about gin and one about margaritas. I can't remember the name of them, but they're all by the same author as Tequila Mockingbird. And the covers are like this beautiful old style like drawings. I love them. And last but not least, and we talked about this at the beginning, but I wanted to recommend that people should buy subscription gift boxes.
Oh, yes.
That are meant for the bookish person.
I guess I'll talk a little bit more about what it is that I've done. I'm super new and I'm trying to really gauge what's working for the Halifax community. And so far what I've put together is, it's a box and I'm ironing out the kinks right now, but right now it includes your choice of either 1 pound of Java blend coffee, 100 grams of World Tea House tea, or a $20 gift card to Bishop Cellar. I have included bottles of wine, and I'm just trying to work with the NSLC to get the right permits right now. Fingers crossed.
There's always so much red tape.
I know there's a lot of red tape. I'm working to try and sort that out. So sit tight for that. It also includes a locally made artisanal chocolate bar.
Okay.
So far, I've included Rousseau's chocolate. I will be including Michelle Ashley's Bakery's chocolates, as well as other locally made artisanal chocolate. There's so many great ones in Halifax, like Gourmandise Avenue and King and North. I don't know why there's such like a mecca of chocolate in Halifax, but I'm so happy about it. And I've also included a novel from a bestsellers list. I know that that's kind of vague, but my intention is to include as many like unique perspectives in terms of literature as possible. Like I love to include LGBTQ authors and people of color and Indigenous authors and women authors and all sorts of people with different perspectives, mostly because I want to share those perspectives and stories, but also because they're a little bit more unique. And I want to try and make sure that people aren't likely to have read the book before.
Right.
And we also meet weekly on Zoom on Sunday evenings to discuss the book.
Okay.
Kind of split it into quarters so that we just kind of get together, chat, drink wine, talk about books. It's a lot of fun.
Interesting. That's like a really great extra to
and so we do a little Zoom call, and I know everyone's a little burnt out from Zoom with work, but it's a lot less stressful, and you just sit there in your pajamas with your wine and your dog's barking and you're eating your dinner, and it's all really relaxed.
Oh, awesome. And obviously if you have a rotational work schedule or something, you're not penalized for missing the meeting or anything.
Oh my gosh,
okay.
No, it's totally meant to be fun. You certainly don't have to join if you don't want to. It's just kind of if you want to chat, if you spend most of your day working and you just want to kind of sit back and chat with people you don't know and make a new friend. Yeah.
I love talking to people I don't know. That's why I do a podcast. Awesome. Yeah. And how much do you charge per month for that? Does it depend on your choices?
Nope. So it's $60 a month. It includes delivery and taxes. It includes delivery if you live in the HRM.
Okay.
I do include delivery to Colchester County, Kings County, and Hants County, and there is a $10 delivery charge. I deliver it myself, so I just make sure that it gets to your house in one piece. And yeah,
that seems pretty reasonable. And maybe someday you can. I'm not part of this. Someday you can scale it a little bit more so that
I'd love to.
People can get it even outside of Nova Scotia. If you're not in Nova Scotia, I do have one. There's a company called Sweet Reed's Box. It doesn't sound quite as good. There's definitely no Sunday Zoom meetings to talk about the book, but it is like a similar style. Get a book, get a drink of some sort style book box just for anybody.
I think they have socks and candles and fun, cozy stuff too.
Yeah, I think so. That one has a significantly higher price point, maybe within the $100 and some odd dollar range, to be honest. I didn't write that down, so I can't remember. But if you're I
think it's 80 to 100. I think you're right.
Yeah. Obviously, if you're in Nova Scotia, it's much preferable to go with Read Between the Vines. But if you're not, there is.
Well, thank you, Jessica.
So I guess that is, if you can't find a gift for your book lover with all of these recommendations, then you certainly don't have any book lovers in your life. So thank you so much for chatting with me about books today. You've certainly given me several that I'd like to add to my to-read list. So if our listeners got nothing but a massive pile of books that they want to read, then our job here is done.